and to see some familiar faces. So welcome today.
Hi, I'm Tamar. I think I'm unmuted. I am the coach for job seekers in healthcare in Chicago, and I am also the head of the healthcare team. And I'm glad to be here and hope we can address some of the technical challenges we're having.
Thank you, Tamar. And you should be able to dial into the meeting on your phone. If you're not able to hear anything, I would recommend staying muted, your default on mute in the webinar, and dialing in using the dial-in number if you're not able to hear anything. And so next, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Isaac Dunn.
Hello, everybody. I'm Isaac. I'm a associate with Upwardly Global, and I've been working with some job seekers in the role of clinical research and development of careers.
Thank you, Isaac. And Rebecca Fishman, if you can hear us, Rebecca.
Rebecca's going to be a bit late, unfortunately.
Thank you, Isaac. And Kiri?
Hi, my name is Kiri. I'm an employment services advisor, mainly in the healthcare sector, but others as well, and I work in the New York location.
Thanks, Kiri. And Ariel?
Hi, everyone. I'm Ariel Reynoso. I'm the volunteer
Thank you. Thanks so much, team. So let's dive into the agenda for today's webinar. So first, my colleague Isaac will go over kind of like an introduction to clinical research. He'll cover what is clinical research, core knowledge needed, trainings, and the different types of positions within clinical research. Following that, we will have our lovely 3 Upwardly Global alumni speakers who are working in clinical research, give a few talks, and then we'll follow that with around 15 minutes of question and answer time where you can pose questions for those speakers and have them answered. Please enter any of those questions in the chat box. Just go ahead and remain muted. And lastly, we will end with a short tutorial on our Slack healthcare career community exclusively for Upwardly Global job seekers. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to my colleague, Isaac.
Thank you very much, Layla. So everybody's here for the purpose of hearing about transferring into a career in clinical research and what that might involve. Clinical research can take on many different forms or different aspects depending on what is being tested, but at its heart, it is making sure that a medical procedure or technique or intervention of some form is a viable and beneficial tool in the healthcare industry. Most people entering into the field of clinical research will be able to work face-to-face with patients, monitoring their reactions, their charts, and their outcomes. And many of our job seekers have expressed a satisfaction in being able to work in that clinical setting once again, especially former international medical graduates, doctors that have moved to America. Today we're going to be hearing from a few of Upwardly Global's alumni that have transitioned successfully into the field of clinical research and their experiences. I'm not able to see the slides. Which one are we on?
We are on what is clinical research, and I'm moving to a core knowledge.
Super. So the core components that are expected for most clinical research positions at an entry level are the HIPAA, which relates to patient confidentiality and is mandated for all states in the United States of America. Many places require or recommend a good clinical practice certificate, which can be acquired on the job as a part of training or can be acquired separately, but we'll get more into those details later. A phlebotomy license is welcome and means that you will be able to actually perform medical interventions yourself, which may be appealing for some. This also comes with a slightly increased expected salary as a result.
Great, and moving on to trainings.
We're continuing to work with our amazing job seekers and training partners to provide foundational skills and certification needed to help them achieve their career goals. We've had some success working with Coursera, which is a talent partner of Upwardly Global. And if anybody doesn't have their Coursera account activated, I highly recommend it. We'll be pointing out a few courses that you can take on that absolutely free. We're also working to get good clinical practice certificates and other available to job seekers that are interested in moving into this field. If you are working in a clinical setting, or if you'd like to work in a clinical setting, or you think that clinical research is an appealing prospective job, please do let your advisor know, as we may be able to help you in acquiring the accreditation you need.
Great, and now we're moving on to a screenshot of Coursera.
Now, Coursera, we typically, when you finish your online training with Upwardly Global, you are sent as a part of our welcome package a link to register for free on Coursera. They have a wide range of courses. Layla here has highlighted 3 that are very strong foundations for work in clinical research. And if you have a background in medicine or in a clinical setting, these should help to cement your experience and knowledge and communicate to prospective employers that you are capable and more than ready to commence.
Thank you, and now we are on types of positions.
Thank you. At an entry level, there is clinical research coordinator and associate. These have some overlap, but generally the assistant role will be one of, associate role will be one of recruitment, collection, and more of a clerical support, organizing the documentation, making sure that the charts and patient's history and such are in order. Whereas a coordinator will be doing much of the same, but may also be expected to discuss and analyze some of the results, and we'll have more of an in-depth look at this sort of thing. Then there's the potential to progress somewhat in the field, but for principal investigation, return to school or reskilling may be required.
Thank you so much, Isaac. So now we are moving into the alumni speaker section of the webinar. And I wanted to give just an explanation of how we are formatting this section. So we have 3 lovely alumni speakers joining us today. And we'll go in order of Vlad, then Askalu, and then Pramod. And we've asked each of the speakers to give us a 5-minute kind of background with some talking points. We've asked them to introduce themselves and talk about issues such as, or questions such as, what challenges did you face during your job search? How did you overcome them? Why did you decide to pursue clinical research? How did you get into clinical research? What are the top 3 certifications or training in clinical research that you would recommend? And what are the top 3 pieces of advice or tips you have for candidates looking for careers in clinical research? Now, as each of the speakers has 5 minutes, these are just some questions and talking points that they may touch on. So once we finish with the 3 alumni speakers, we will then open it up for questions and answers for 15 minutes. So our first speaker is Vlad. And Vlad is a research associate at Case Western Reserve University and a medical contractor with the Expert Institute. So Vlad, we are so honored to have you with us today, and I will hand it off to you.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction. I'm honored to be here today, and it's my pleasure to be even a little helpful in this challenging topic. So let me share my screen. Are you able to see my screen clearly?
Yes, we are, Vlad.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Can you hear me?
Yes, if you could,
All right.
if you could go further to the microphone, that would be perfect, actually, if it's possible.
I will try.
Thank you.
All right. So again, thanks for this introduction and thanks for having me today. It's my pleasure to be helpful. And this is my agenda for today. As I was introduced, my background is academic and clinical international cardiology. I was fully trained in Russia in residency and fellowship, and I've been working in the field for 10+ years. And currently, in the last couple of years, I'm conducting cardiac imaging research and Case Western Reserve University and University hospitals. Challenges. So obviously, being a foreign medical graduate, I've had plenty of challenges on my way. First of all, I had to learn, I had to build a career once again, starting almost from the scratch because of the language, diploma evaluation, medical licensing test, known as the USMLE steps, and then seeking training, going through the match process, repeat residency again, fellowships, and this is an overwhelming journey. So this comes to the conversation why I decided to pursue clinical research. In my previous career, I've never considered research as a main profession, but I've always been taught that the science for the practicing doctor is an essential complement to the clinical practice because you have to follow the publications, follow the guidelines, follow the updates in your specialty, attend scientific meetings, and you have to be able to read the papers, understand the design, understand the results, and incorporate those in your daily practice. So this is an inevitable part of clinical work if you want to be a good doctor or physician scientist. And in current situation, I do research as a bridge to start clinical training. And many IMGs, it's not the secret, they pursue research to make their CV stronger, get exposed to the clinical settings, build the connections, and eventually get the residency position. We call it kick the door. And especially research is helpful when you might have some weaknesses or red flags in your CV, like a low score, fails, gaps, all graduate, and some red flags might impact your ability to match. Or another situation when you have another year before the next match, and research is one of the obvious choice. So clinical research for such candidates is a chance to sell yourself, to prove your competency, to prove your ability to work. And also you may receive valuable clinical experience of interaction with patients, receive letters of recommendations, and get closer to your goal. So clinical research is a good bridge to residency if you play it smart. It's not a guarantee though. Is research required for residency? No, absolutely not necessary. If you have a strong profile, fresh grad, high scores, no attempts, no visa issues, then most likely you can match from the first attempt, especially in such programs like internal medicine or family medicine at the community hospitals that highly desire such people. In community programs, they do not care much about scientific background. They need people who would work 24/7 and pass the board at the end. In oppose, there's many opportunities in academia, like fellowships, and usually they consider candidates more holistically in terms of research abilities, and they see who would be a potential physician scientist, the PI, a principal investigator, and create the grants, generate the revenue, and generate the meaningful science. In my situation, research was a natural choice, since I had to spend some time after immigration to learn English, study for steps, and could not apply for the match immediately while needed a job. How did I get there? So having a scientific and clinical background and having attended some regular meetings, I had a large network in my country and some contacts in the US and some contacts in my country who have a contacts in the US. So network, I'll point this out. Network is the key here. If you don't have a connection, make them. If you don't know somebody, you might know somebody who might know somebody who knows that person. The second thing that I was doing, I've been researching academic programs, medical schools, and affiliated hospitals, and writing hundreds of emails, letters of interest, letters of intent, requests for observership. So in my case, the observership has worked. I found a big institution in the faculty who is a prominent specialist in structural heart disease, and he is an IMG himself. So he replied on my letter, and I've been visiting the university hospital for 1 month. Observership is a ticket to an opportunity. During that month, I personally reached out to research faculties, and I've met core lab the director and offered my willingness to volunteer. So volunteering is another key. And of course, my experience in cardiology and cardiac intravascular imaging obviously helped, and also helped that I was willing to commit a year of volunteer work. Going forward, after a few months of volunteering, I was invited to the project that was funded by an ID grant. So research directors might not want to hire you if they sense that you might be using them to try to get into a residency program. It takes time to train you before you would be able to pay back. If the research director suspects that you are going to ask for time off to take you through these steps, and then 6 months later you're going to ask for a letter of recommendation, and then you're going to quit, they're not eager to hire you. If you're asking your profit upfront, that it's not directly related to the research program, you're not a very appealing job candidate. So play smart in that sense. Contribute first. So research is different, and it's really hard to give a broad advice without tailoring on individual situation. And for IMGs, for foreign medical graduates who are looking for research fellowships, I would say being proactive is the most important. If you understand the study design, like randomized controlled studies, observational descriptive studies, it's good. Publications is your goal, but not every publication is valuable. So biostatistics is highly appreciated. If you know biostatistic beyond overuse new material, you're highly competent. The most common software is SAS, SPSS, and R. Currently, machine learning and deep learning and artificial intelligence is a hot topic, and everybody wants to do machine learning research and aim to predict the outcomes. So PhD, if you have one, it helps, but it's not necessary. And it's not worth it to take PhD program into this, because especially if you aim clinical research, clinical residency, because this program takes up to 7 years. So master's degree, master's in research, clinical research, or master's in public health might be reasonable to consider, especially if you have another year and some funds to invest. And as previous speaker has mentioned, Coursera, but also LinkedIn Learning, they're great resource to learn many things. And such trainings as the CT, HIPAA, research regulatory compliance training, and standard of practice training, they're not necessarily to get into clinical research for the doctor, because they are going to be provided by the hospital for free. We talked about the academic research for the doctors, but there is a commercial research in pharmaceutical or medical device industry and CRO, which is the clinical research organizations. And commercial clinical research would be interesting for nurses. In fact, companies that hire clinical research associate and clinical research nurses, they do not want to doctorate degrees, since their perception that doctors are overqualified. A bachelor degree is usually a requirement. So the duties are related to the study implementation. It could be working with documentation, it could be subjects enrollment or monitor of the study. The main requirements is CRA certifications. As I said, it could be a CPI, Certified Principal Investigator, CCRI, Certified Clinical Research Associate or Clinical Research Coordinator. So also hospitals hire nurses who would switch their clinical work to research or administrative work. What they do the same, but hospitals require nurse licensed. So since they interact with these patients. What is CRA certifications? There are two main associations that provide membership and certification. Those are the websites, and I can share those websites later on. I've never received one because in academic research, you don't need to. However, this training, they provide essential knowledge about research conduction. And you may find the training cost and certification cost and eligibility criteria on the websites. So my advice would be different for different audience. First of all, understand what you really want from research. Define your ultimate goal, whether it's pure science or residency breach or commercial research, and then find the research field that's relevant to your personal experience and make a plan. There are pros and cons and many differences between working in industry and academia, but it's always up to your decision based on your skills, career goals, and financial expectations. So in academic research, you may produce the knowledge. Publishing is as I said, publishing papers is the key. The pay is low, and you may struggle to get the funding. In industry, it's opposite. The research purpose mainly to generate the revenue to sell the product, and business plan is the key, and pay is high. So there is some learning resources, and if you have that I could recommend, if you have some research published, if you have some publications, create an account on ResearchGate to make your work visible. It's like a social networking for the researchers or scientists, and there's also job listing as well. So don't be afraid to take formal classes or formal formal academic program. Here is the link from my university. If you want to be marketable, invest in your education. And I can share this link further and any information about formal programs. So LinkedIn Learning is a good resource, and Coursera, especially provided by UpGlo for free. There is a list of institutions that offer. I just briefly researched them yesterday, like in 10 minutes maybe. They provide opportunities in research fellowships and research jobs position. I can share them later. And again, to find the research, do your research. Define your goal, make a plan, and always reach your mentors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vlad. And we will work on sharing these links in the Upwardly Global Slack channel. If you haven't already joined Slack, we'll tell you more about that at the end of the webinar. But as I go to share my screen, I will introduce Askalu, who's a clinical research coordinator at IQVIA. So Askalu, we are so honored to have you with us today. I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic, and I'll let you take it from there. We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you, Leila. So I don't have a slide prepared. Hello, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here today to experience my, to share my experience. And thank you, Leila, for extending the invitation for me to speak here today. And hopefully, I hope my experience, my journey through this would help somehow, some way today. So I am a foreign medical graduate. I studied medicine in Oroka School of Medicine in my country back home, Eritrea. It's a small country in the East Africa, and I was a practicing general practitioner for 4 years in a community hospital. I worked there at different levels in the hospital, and I had some coming before I come to the US. I had some experience in observational research. So I immigrated to the US in 2018, and I joined Upwardly Global mid 2018 around August. It was the best decision I have made in my job seeking process, and I learned the ABCs of resume writing, customization, and everything from Upwardly Global, and I acquired the skills I have today to land ultimately a job as a clinical research coordinator. So now I'm working with IQVIA. It's a data science company. So how did I get there? So first, when I come to the US, I got myself to the US and I was brainstorming what should I do? I was looking for something to apply my clinical experience, something that would keep me in tune with the science of medicine, and that does not require licensing and still able me to contribute to the healthcare system here. So then clinical research was my top priority. It was an easy decision because I love research and I was always passionate about it. So then the answer came, how do I get into research? So I decided, okay, then I started volunteering. I got a volunteer position with the help of a family member in around where I live in Los Angeles Biomedical Institution. It was a position as a bench research. It was different from clinical research because it was more about lab work. But joining that institution helped me to see the workflow, how the workflow in the US was. And also, I was able to get the GCP training. Of course, I did observational research back home, but I had no idea how clinical trials worked. So it gave me an insight that when I took the GCP training, it gave me an insight on how clinical trials work, and that way. So I added the volunteer experience and that GCP training into my resume, and I started applying to different positions for a clinical research coordinator. And I was not hearing back for a while. It was a little bit, it was challenging and it was emotionally taxing at the moment. And I said, and then I had to review, like, why am I not hearing back? So of course that the companies need to see that key US experience, but I did not have that US experience. So I went to those factors that I can modify. Like, okay, I started taking trainings on Coursera. Like, I took the clinical trial management course, and I also took another course from edX that says fundamentals of clinical trials. And I started adding all these things into my resume. So I was boosting up my resume by taking those training. And I also had that volunteer experience. And then also at the beginning, I was applying to all these different big companies, university hospitals and stuff. And the competition is high on those companies. And I said, okay, let me start to get that US experience. Let me start to apply to those less competitive areas. Like, and I started to apply to those private small clinical research sites. And soon after, I got a job. I was called for an interview and I got the job. And I landed my first clinical research coordination job at Access Clinical Trials. And I have worked there for a year. And then I transitioned to this company where I'm currently working now. So in clinical research, getting that first job may be a little bit challenging, and you may need to boost your resume in different ways. But once you get there, because we have worked as doctors, we know patient care. It's just breaking down a protocol is just like following a guideline while you're treating a patient. So the job is easy, but getting that first job was challenging, and you have to strategize on how to be more marketable and on how to customize the resume, on boosting that resume with volunteering and with trainings. So anyway, and then yeah, the challenge was just getting that first job, and then what would I do differently now if I started? I would be more intentional with my volunteer. When I choose a volunteering, I was just looking for a research, anything that's research. So working like bench research is good. It's the hardcore science, but it's different from clinical trials. So volunteering is key. Volunteering is key to get that first experience, but I would invest that time into volunteering in a clinical research side. And yeah, and also I would definitely get a phlebotomy certificate, because getting that phlebotomy certificate just makes your resume stand out. I know different states have different rules. In California, for example, you can get phlebotomy certificate if you find somebody who can write you letter of experiences. There is ways. You don't even need to go to school full course. If somebody can write you a letter of experience, that's how I got my phlebotomy certificate. When I got the job at Access Clinical Trials, the doctor was willing to write me a letter of experience, and I only took 2 weeks. It was a self-paced course. I registered an online class. I took that and I was licensed within a month. So there is those opportunities, but I highly recommend taking, having that phlebotomy certificate, and also GCP and IATA. IATA is, because when you apply for clinical research sites, they want somebody who does everything. Like they want somebody who draw the blood. They want somebody to process and ship those samples. To ship the samples, you need to know IATA. To draw the blood, you need the phlebotomy certificate. So that makes you marketable. So that's what I recommend, like trainings that I recommend. Another thing I recommend, also networking. You should network and take advantage of LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile is not polished as I want it to be, but still I got this job through LinkedIn. When I created that LinkedIn profile, I started to get called. I started to get approached by potential employers. So I would definitely work on LinkedIn, and yeah, LinkedIn, volunteering, and getting those basic certificates. I mean, GCP, of course, GCP and IATA is mostly provided. Once you get hired, they can provide you that. But because we don't have that US experience, getting those certificates beforehand, first of all, would familiarize you with the industry, with how the clinical trials work and the rules and the regulations. It would make your life so much easier when you start that. And also, it shows that you have some knowledge coming in, and it would help you to speak the language of clinical trials when you interview and when you market yourself. I think I don't know if I'm missing any of those questions. So yeah, that's all I have, and I am happy to answer if anybody have any questions later. Yeah. Back to you, Leila.
Hello.
Sorry, folks.
Go ahead, Isaac.
I was just saying, sorry, folks. We'll just be a minute. We'll have it back and running.
Great. So I'm so sorry I was kicked off, but I believe you should all be able to see the presentation now. And Askalu, I last heard you speaking, so I'm guessing that we need to hand it over to Pramad, who is a medical writer, clinical at AbbVie.
Thank you, Leila. Thank you for introducing me. And thank you to Aska and Vlad giving I mean, almost a 360-degree orientation about clinical research. I think most of the, let me tell me about my journey in clinical research. I worked in India almost 20 years as a clinical practitioner. I worked in clinical research, and I was a medical manager, like for a EMS company. So I have huge experience in clinical sciences. So last 3 years of my career, I worked in clinical research back in India in the industry sector. So after coming to United States, I realized that the chances of getting into residency with this 20 years experience as an old medical graduate, it would be very difficult. And that's why I decided to, continue as a clinical researcher. Now it doesn't matter whether it's academia or industry, because I already had experience in industry. So then, and so how to get into the industry? That was the biggest question, or get into clinical research. So I started obviously looking out for various options how to get in, and through volunteering or through LinkedIn connections and all that. Everything I tried, it didn't work on that particular moment. Maybe my approach was wrong. So then I started my master's in clinical research at Rush University Medical Center, and that's how I started working on some projects, and through my connections internally, I could get a job as a clinical research coordinator in the, in gastroenterology at Rush. And that's how my career in clinical research started at Rush. Now, I worked for 1.5 years almost in Russia as clinical research coordinator, and now presently I'm working in Abbey as a medical writer, clinical. Basically, we're working as a part of clinical trial disclosure team. So this is my career. Career graph, whatever I should say. Now, how do I get? How do we enter in clinical research now? Vlad has already spoken about the academic clinical research, how to get into that. He has also mentioned so many things related to the trainings, his connections, volunteering, everything. And Aska, she also mentioned about the industry clinical research, how to get into that. My approach is like this. First of all, you need to decide what exactly you want to do. Whether you want to get into residency, if you're international medical, I'm talking in terms for international medical graduates, specifically if they want to get into residency, or they want to get into clinical per se, and that's one thing. The second thing would be they want to get into clinical research, which is academic. Third one would be um, industry clinical research. Now, industry clinical research, there are several aspects in industry as well. You don't have to just be a coordinator or an associate in industry. There are other branches as well of research, which I would like to tell you. That's one is pharmacovigilance, and the other one is medical writing. Now, both these branches are quite lucrative, especially pharmacovigilance. And if you are interested, we have already mentioned about the other career path, which Vlad has already mentioned, clinical research coordinator and associate and all that. So I'll speak mostly on pharmacovigilance and medical writing. So medical writing is if you have a decent, you have a good exposure in clinical research and apply for these positions of medical writer, then the chances of getting into, medical writing is, not easy. I should not say easy, but if you go through recruitment agencies, it will work out better. That's one thing. As far as the pharmacovigilance is concerned, that's the most important one and very good branch. I should say it is one of the best careers in clinical research if you want to grow up faster with your medical degree back from your home country. Okay, and this one you can go through some pharmacovigilance courses, which I should say are available. Some of them are available online, which are cheaper, but there is one in New Jersey, which is a little expensive, but it's worth doing it because they help you finding jobs. They help you getting connections in the industry, and that's how you enter the industry. And once you enter in pharmacovigilance, even as a drug safety associate or a pharmacovigilance associate or a medical reviewer, you have a very good career. So even life science graduates who want to enter into pharmacovigilance, they can use this pathway. There are various, paths to grow for life science graduates in the pharmacovigilance industry. And for medical graduates, there is a separate path which they can choose and grow, like even to the level of medical directors. I know many people who are international medical graduates with no residency, never done residency, and just by entering the industry, they have gone to such, top level positions. So that's one career I can talk about because everything others, every aspect of clinical research, Vlad and Raska are already spoken about. Okay. So this is the one. As far as trainings are concerned, I already mentioned trainings in pharmacovigilance. The in clinical research, I mean, you've gone through the slides, so you must have seen that what GCP and what do you call it? One more training I would like to add in that one is the new cats of Northwestern Training, which has a good teaching about what do you call module on the budgeting, clinical research budgeting. That helps a lot. If you have that, oh, the what do you call the CRO industry will definitely hire you. That's all. Thanks a lot. That's all from my side.
Thank you so much, Prama. That was very helpful. So now we're going to start opening it up to questions from the chat box in just a moment. Although when we sent the reminder email to the Upwardly Global candidates, we collected some questions beforehand, before the webinar. And so I'd like to present a couple questions to our three speakers, Askalu, Pramod, or Vlad. And the first question that we pre-collected is, how can I get the chance to volunteer or the opportunity to volunteer? So I guess the question is sort of, where would you look for volunteer opportunities to get started in clinical research? And I'll open this up to either Pramod, Skalu, Vlad. Take it away.
Okay.
I can start first. Oh, Pramod, sorry, you can first. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I would suggest academic clinical research is more easy to get rather than in industries, which is obvious. Like, so academia, they are looking for people who want to volunteer in research, and there are so many opportunities. But unfortunately, because of the last year COVID issue, it's been really difficult for people to enter into clinical research. I mean, volunteering. But once, I mean, this issue gets over, I think so it will be far more easy. But still, it's you can approach professors. I mean, PIs. We would be, usually associate professor who would be working on projects, and you can request them that if you can work. Volunteer with them. If it works out, I mean, it depends on the university's policies, whether they can take volunteers or not. And it's all related to COVID issues, nothing else. Let me tell.
Thank you. And Vlad, did you want to also respond?
Yes. So this might be a little bit challenging, especially this current pandemic situation, to find volunteering or to find any observerships. As I said before, I've been sending hundreds of emails. I've been literally utilizing every single person I knew, and I've been trying to find some friends or friends of the friends, reach them out and ask them to recommend me if they know somebody who has any ability to invite me for the observerships. So networking, number one. Number two, research. Do your research. Just look for the positions in the. It's better to find some big institutions. So big institutions, they have more opportunities, they have more positions, and usually they even post them. I shared some links from Cleveland Clinic or from Yale University or from Stanford. They have a research fellowships position published. You may apply them. You may just send emails to faculty in these big institutions, send them your letters of intent, letters of interest. So again, network and research. It might be challenging, I know, but it's possible. It might take some time, but it's all doable.
Thank you. And Askalu, you should be unmuted now if you'd like to also respond.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have similar opinions as Prada and what's the name? I don't want to say it wrong. Anyway, yeah, I would say reaching out to those, especially those small clinical sites they're always short-staffed, and you get to see, it gives you the opportunity to see the whole moving parts of clinical trials. So I would approach because a lot of doctors' office have clinical, they do research. They have a research office by the side. And yeah, there is also sites that are dedicated to clinical research. They are like a private practice, small doctor's office, but they are clinical sites. So I would reach out to those and ask like, hey, I am this, I can offer this, and I would love to volunteer. So I just looking on those, especially because I work in industry, funded research. So I would reach out to those small sites. I would prefer actually to work on this, especially if you're looking to work in a clinical research. If academia is different, but for the industry side of research, approaching those sites would be helpful, and I'm sure they would be happy to give opportunities, because most of the time they are overworked and they are understaffed.
Thank you, Askalu. And I believe we have time for one more question before we go into the Slack tutorial. So Tamar, Patty, Isaac, Kiri, have we gotten any, maybe one question in particular that you would like to pose to the speakers from the chat box?
Eba asked, I'm a periodontist and interested in clinical research in dentistry. Does the training and courses will the training courses be different?
Thank you. And let's just have one speaker, if possible, reply to that before we wrap up.
I don't believe it would be much different because it's basically the same interaction with patients. But as I mentioned before, if you know some biostatistics, if you have some biostatistical knowledge, if you know how to work with data, there's not much different. It's basically data and just how you process it, how you do your statistical analysis. And I would suggest to take some classes in biostatistics.
Thank you so much, Vlad. So thank you all so much, Vlad, Askalu, and Pramod. I'm going to give a very short Slack tutorial for the Upwardly Global candidates who are on the call. And just to kind of give you a sense, in late last year, Upwardly Global launched Slack for the healthcare career community. It's exclusive for Upwardly Global candidates to join and to be able to talk to each other, so job seeker to job seeker, to talk to advisors, and to just kind of be able to see this forum where you can have discussions, get updates. So I'm going to go ahead and share the Slack app so you can kind of, so I can walk you through what it would look like. The process to get on Slack, if you're not already on Slack, is to ask your UpGlo advisor once your resume is complete and you have finished your online training and had that one-on-one meeting with them. So this is what the Slack app looks like, and I encourage everyone to download it on their computer or their phone. You can see it's the Upwardly Global Slack, and here this is the sidebar. So with channels, these are sort of discussion topics. If it has a hashtag, that means it's public. And if it has this little lock, it means it's private. So once you join Slack, we will invite you to the healthcare channel. You can see we have one for clinical research. We have Healthcare I'm New, Healthcare Opportunities, where we post about all the different job openings, trainings. You can always kind of go scroll through anything we've posted in the past. You can, you can like it, you can comment. We also have healthcare, public and global health, residency. So if you have not already joined Slack, please reach out to your UpGlo advisor to get an invitation once you have that one-on-one meeting and your online training complete with those UpGlo trainings. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I will be sending out a copy of the recorded webinar along with the PowerPoint presentation we reviewed to you tomorrow. So sit tight and that will be in your email inboxes soon. Thank you all so much for joining us today on behalf of all of my healthcare teammates, and feel free to chime in, teammates, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having
Yes.
us.
Thank you, everybody. This was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. And anybody who wants to ask me any questions, I will write my email here. You guys, if you can contact me if you find that I can help in any way, any one of the job seekers. So I'm gonna write it my email here.
Thank you.
Still got a open mic, yeah.
Are we taking off or any post-meeting chat? Layla?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Are we taking off?
Yes, thank you so much for joining
Okay.
us today. Sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties and delays. But yes, that's the conclusion. And we really would like to thank you so much for all of the helpful advice. And I would love it if you would share your presentation with Patty, Tamar, and I, and Kiri. We can, over email, take those links that you shared and share them externally with our UpGlo candidates.
Absolutely. I'm about to mail it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.